This train rumbles on. Wonderful piece of music from Tim Haynes, a local musician. Reggie, good afternoon to you. Good morning to you.
Yes, good morning, Paul. Good afternoon to you.
Thank you, sir. We've got a busy schedule today. We'll take it through in just a minute, but another piece of music from Tim Haynes, The Children of Ukraine, as it's in our minds. The wonderful Tim Haynes. We'll play the full track at the end of our little chat. It's Friday. It's Friday the 19th of September. We have a busy session. So welcome to the Sustack Plans Chat Club, where we discuss AI, innovation and ethics in everything in the world of marketing and business. I'm PR Smith, and we've got Reggie Johnson all the way from Fort Worth, Texas with us. We've got a nice busy agenda for you. We're going to be talking about 95% of generative AI projects are failing. And also AI is still going rogue, and the issue of shadow AI is rampant. So we'll be looking at how do we deal with that. We'll also be talking about specifically Google's chatbot. In fact, Reggie, I think we might put the Google chatbot into next week, and we get Wayne to talk about that for us, because we don't have too much negative stuff in there. So we'll park that one, but we'll just go with AI goes rogue and shadow AI, and then we'll look at AI assistants delivering inaccurate news, a piece of research by BBC. Now, spinning off that, Trump will be a program on 2 nights ago on Channel 4 in the UK. Don't know if you get it in the States or elsewhere, but it was shocking. Trump versus Truth. And we'll mention that. And also, I'm going to ask you, Reggie, to tell us about angry algorithms post Charlie Kirk. What's that doing, and how do we deal with that in the world of information and business that we live in? We'll then wrap it up with the piece about AI and the future of education. And have you got your basic meta skills? We look at that and finish then with the Ryder Cup. It starts next week. The ancient tribal warfare between Europe and America is not to do with politics. It's pure golf. It's that wonderful every 2 years the Ryder Cup appears. Well, guess what? They're using virtual reality, the European team, to prepare themselves. So we'll give you a little look at that. Prepare themselves for abuse, actually. It's quite funny. We'll get to that. All right. So let's kick off with a report that came out from MIT. And it was basically saying that 95% of generative AI pilots are failing. This is in business now. So, if MIT say it, it's worth having a listen to. So, generative AI, we know, holds promises for enterprises. There's no doubt about it. But they're finding that most initiatives to drive rapid revenue growth are failing. They're falling flat. And so there's a clear divide between success stories and stalled projects that ain't going anywhere. Now, what they found in this report, which is quite interesting, actually, that some large companies, pilots, and younger startups are really excelling with generative AI, but they're really only about 5% out of all the ones that have been used. But they found that startups led by 19 to 20-year-olds, so well done, the youth brigade, startups by 19 to 20-year-olds have seen revenues jump from 0 to something like 20 million a year in certain cases. Why is that? Well, it's because they do something very simple, the old 1, 2, 3. 1, they pick one pain point. 2, they execute it really well. And 3, they partner smartly with companies who use their tools. Clever stuff. I mean, it's marketing 101, isn't it? But what about the 95% that are failing? Well, what's the core issue? Why are they failing with generative AI? And they're finding that it's not the quality of the AI models themselves, but it's the learning gap between the tools and the organizations. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's a flawed enterprise integration. That's what it means. So putting the thing together and into the enterprise and locking it into systems isn't working so well. So, they can see that, ChatGPT, for example, is excellent for individuals because it's really flexible and easy to use. But then when you put it into an enterprise, it doesn't work so well because they don't learn from that, or they don't seem to be able to adapt to the workflows. So, and there's also a misalignment of resource allocation. Now, this is interesting. So that more than half of generative AI budgets are devoted to sales and marketing tools. Yet MIT finds that the biggest return on investment potential is, guess what? Back office automation. What we've said all along, what everybody said all along. So they're kind of going too hard on the sales and forgetting about the basic stuff, perhaps. So, limiting eliminating business process outsourcing, cutting external agency costs, streamlining operations, all of that good stuff where AI can help. Perhaps have been ignored in the quest for sales and marketing. So that's a kind of word of warning. Enterprises spend too much time trying to build their own tools. They should really, if something's built, use it, adopt it, pay the money. It'll save a lot of time, a lot of messing around. Purchase solutions deliver
There's a
more.
need to be intentional too, because we see a lot of CEOs adopting it because of fear of missing out or worries that their stockholders will think they're not innovative if they don't adopt it, and they don't have a good, clear sense of why they're adopting it and applying it. And it sounds like that's where it could be where some of the integration issues come, is when it's just being like, we've just got to use AI. What for? I don't know. We'll just got to use it.
Yeah, well said. And it's interesting that MIT picked that up with the small businesses. They said they focus on a single pain point and then they execute it with perfection. So they were very focused. Maybe for bigger companies it's too much, but maybe the CEO should be saying, let's just focus on a discrete area. Let's see if we can get it, rather than trying to do everything for everyone. You're right, Reggie, I agree. So they said, the MIT thing, just to finish it now, said the key factors for success include empowering line managers. Not just making central AI labs, but get the line managers involved, get them making stuff. That I thought was common sense. And one thing they did say is that shadow AI is an issue. That's unsanctioned tools like ChatGPT being used without management knowing about it. And Reggie, your colleague Kim Brown knows quite a bit about the kind of stopping shadow AI. We're going to talk about this.
Yes, her agency here in the Fort Worth area, Story and Strategy, has been kind of leading some of the conversation in the area and the research about the state of communications, including AI. And she wrote an article about shadow AI and the fact that she says the question isn't whether to use it, AI that is, but how to use it responsibly and effectively, developing comprehensive AI policies before problems arise, not after. Now, here's the key points. One, employees are using AI. Between 75 and 90% of marketing, PR, and communications professionals say that they're using AI tools, but only 30% of Fortune 50 companies actually publicly disclose how they're using AI, have a policy around AI, have some sort of control on the situation. So without proper policies, organizations find themselves in this shadow AI territory, which means that employees are using AI tools that are unsanctioned and they're not under the purview of the IT department. There's cybersecurity risks, there's credibility and trust risks for the organization, there's legal risks, there's confidential information. So she gives us some essential elements for AI policies, and that includes human oversight. Every AI-generated content piece should be reviewed. We've talked about this before. Protect information, clear guidelines on what information can be put in. Transparency and disclosure, be upfront about your use. Bias and accuracy, and this is verifying factual accuracy. I think we've talked a lot about this, but I think it's easier said than done is how do you check for bias, of course. Some of that talk about having a diverse team, making sure you've got diversity of perspectives in order to evaluate output, not just one person, and in situations where diversity is an important component, bias could be a component, and accountability. And I think this is especially where AI is helping make decisions, like with HR, that's really important. But also accountability and ethics, is another area. And so she gives these best practices for communication teams. One is, specific branding and tone to your prompts. So that's making your AI work for your organization instead of just as an individual. And you have more power over that when you take a lead as the organization instead of the shadow AI situation where maybe your employees aren't applying branding and tone.
So the brand guidelines would be included in the guidelines for AI use.
Yeah, I think that definitely would be a way to bring up your brand voice. You've probably developed a brand voice, and making sure employees are using that with AI is critical. Reviewing and revising, properly tagging AI-generated images or videos, and also editing out obvious AI markers. Now, some people debate this. Are M-dashes an obvious AI marker, or is that just kind of been overplayed? What about emojis and robotic phrases? Well, that's kind of I feel like that's one that people go around on. But either way, her summary is AI can be a valuable ally, but only when used with proper oversight, clear policies, and unwavering commitment to transparency and accountability. And I like the way that she put that at the very end there.
Yeah, nice. I mean, we have talked about AI going rogue. So we're saying that Kim Brown has identified a lot of AI going rogue because they don't have guidelines, and it's therefore it's this kind of gray area, the shadow AI that emerges, which is not good. But even prior to shadow AI, let's say non-shadow AI, just goofy stuff. Microsoft's Tay, we've talked about this before, back in 2016, they released this bot and it became a Nazi within a day. They had to withdraw it very, very quickly. Alphabet's Google Bard, was that 2 or 3 years ago? What a sloppy hallucination that was. It cost them $100 billion drop in the market value of the company behind it. And we've got one more recently. Oh, I was watching Mark Zuckerberg launch whatever product it was. I shared it on LinkedIn, but it was an absolute farcical disaster. It just didn't work, basically. So lots of AI goes rogue for all sorts of reasons. I suspect with the Zuckerberg fiasco there on stage to his massive audience, it really was farcical. I suspect it was a lack of guidelines, a lack of preparation, a lack of rehearsal. I'm too busy. Jump off the private jet and just walk on stage, and you're told what to. It looked like that. It looked like very little preparation. So the lack of guidelines, you're right, is going to trigger more rogue and shadow AI. So
Well, and the company needs to take a leadership role in the implementation in AI, because otherwise the employees are going to do it in 1,000 different points,
yeah,
individually, or disorganized and without
yes.
strategy.
Yeah, yeah. Now we did talk about, I think it was Esther Lade, that actually said to all their employees, "Look, tell us if you were particularly interested in AI and you think you'd like to use it for your department or division or product, come and talk to us and we'll set it up. We'll fund you, we'll support you." But it's the people put their hands up, and it wasn't just chaos, everybody doing everything. They just said, "Yeah, we'll budget that, we'll do this, we'll give you that much time," and that was a clever way of getting the people, the champions. But the importance of all of this stuff, of AI going rogue, it's more than just embarrassing for the company or the brand, but in the world we live in, it is a disaster. If we've got goofy AI stuff generating goofy information, this can disturb world politics, world stability, world choice, play into the hands of the oligarchs that we've kind of identified in previous events and talks. So here's the BBC doing a major piece of research that they released, and they were saying that AI assistants are not generating accurate newsworthy information. So what they did was they trained it, and they trained 4 or 5 of the biggest ones, assistants from OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, and they fed them BBC only content over certain items, and they put together a team of experts and then asked them questions and logged down the accuracy of their answers. And what they found was kind of frightening. Really frightening. Google's Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, OpenAI's ChatGPT, and Perplexity. So they want to know whether they could provide accurate answers to questions being asked of them. So they gave them the AI access to the BBC website and then asked them questions and then measured it. And so it was done in a very well-structured way. But the answers by AI assistants showed significant inaccuracies and distorted content. So 51% of all answers to questions about the news were judged to have significant issues of some form.
51%?
51%. I mean, that's the majority. That is complete waste of time then.
That's a coin flip.
Yeah, coin flip, absolutely. 19% of AI answers which cited BBC content introduced factual errors, should I say. 13% of the quotes sourced from BBC articles were either altered or not present in the article at all, a complete hallucination. But overall, 51% were deemed to have significant issues. So that's that's a disaster. Society can't function without a shared understanding of facts. So if we're all kind of down these rabbit holes, getting more polarized and more biased, the inaccuracies from AI assistants can be amplified, and particularly when shared on social networks, and that's what we're seeing. So a lot of times we have been calling for those big tech companies to clean up their acts and get more accuracy. They're still slow to do it. I mean, for example, they asked Google's Gemini, the NHS, they asked you questions about giving up cigarette smoking, and it said the NHS advises people not to start vaping and recommends smokers who want to quit should use other methods. Fact. The NHS does recommend vaping as a method to quit smoking. So it's completely wrong information. Microsoft's Copilot, they stated that Giselle Pelicot uncovered the crimes against her when she was having blackouts and memory loss. Wrong. In fact, she found out about the crimes when the police showed her the videos. Perplexity misstated the date of Michael Mosley's death and misquoted a statement from Liam Payne's family after his death. I mean, frightening stuff. It's just complete distortion of the truth. So if it's fragmenting through AI, then multiplied by the bias that social media brings in, and the implications of this research are far-reaching. So AI assistants cannot currently be relied upon to provide accurate news, is the conclusion BBC have come to. They risk misleading the audience. While AI assistants often include a disclaimer about the risk of inaccuracy, people don't even listen or watch that kind of stuff. They just listen to the content they've been given. So, you can't just excuse yourself and say, we're not 100% sure, double check this, which is what they're starting to do. So they're going to repeat the study in the near future, and that is all down to Peter Archer, Program Director of Generative AI 3. Now, I need to tell you about something which is skewing the truth, and that was while Donald Trump arrived in the UK, Channel 4 in the UK, and I don't know if you can see this in America, Reggie, but Channel 4 did a thing called Trump versus the Truth. And I've never seen a program like it in my life before. Now, it was too long. It was, I think I fell asleep towards the end of it, but, it was late at night. But it was stunning. They show Trump making a statement, and then they give you the actual fact and proving. And there was over 100 of these clips that they took him to task on. And so the importance of having somebody tell us what is the actual truth as opposed to some of the other stuff that's out there. And this brings me to another thing, Reggie. I want to ask you about angry algorithms and the damage of news and facts and polarization. Charlie Kirk is
Yes.
big in the news right now. Is that being used? Are people? Are we getting the right information about Charlie Kirk? Love him or hate him, can we at least tell us proper information about him? What's happening there, do you think, at the moment?
Well, I think that first off, Charlie Kirk's assassination is a predictable outcome of social media algorithms that are designed to leverage outrage to addict audiences. I would say the reaction to Charlie Kirk, which is within hours, we had a president saying, this is the left, this is the extreme left. Well, if you read from NPR and reliable news sources, the story that's come out is a little bit more complicated. I won't go into detail on that, but it's really not a leftist opposing a rightist. But the reaction is left versus right, us versus them. And that plays right into the hands of social media companies whose strategy is to divide us, to leverage outrage in order to enrich themselves at the expense of human relationships, unity, and democracy itself, and of violence. The real tragedy is that a life was lost, and unnecessarily so, because of this polarization climate. You can say they started it. Trump started it with his violent rhetoric, calling leftists, people on the left, vermin, and threatening to do this, and then actually doing these things that are unconstitutional. And you can say, well, they started it. The left are killing our people and whatever. And really, the truth is, it doesn't have as much to do with left versus right. It may have been because this gentleman had a trans lover, and Charlie Kirk was talking to young people about anti-trans messaging. And it might have been more about internet memes and gaming culture. But what we can count on is that the outrage before the event that led to it and the outrage afterward are enriching social media companies, because these are algorithms that are designed to addict through outrage. And that's what's causing such an us versus them mentality. So let's not play into that. Let's demand accountability, because these are predictable outcomes, and the reaction has been so much falling into line with just playing right into their hands. Do you think anybody's actually paying attention to the real facts versus just jumped on? If you're on the left, you're saying, well, he wasn't really a Democrat. And if you're on the right, saying, look at these Democrats,
But where do you get the factual, accurate facts? Where do people get it?
Well, I read an article on NPR, which I think is much more reliable because it's not commercially driven. Not that commercially driven news places can't be reliable. There's a news company in Fort Worth that's reshaping local news with a nonprofit model. It's called the Fort Worth Report, and it's a great example of how local news can be viable in a nonprofit way because of how important local news is to holding local government accountable. It's a big problem in the United States, local news dying out, being bought out by larger companies, or being outsourced, and then eventually just stopping existing. And that corruption goes up, tax goes up, problems go up locally when local news dies out. So,
Yeah.
I mean, your sources have to matter, but I'd say even beyond that, not just saying like looking beyond a profit motive. And the reason why I'm not trying to demonize profits, it's that motives for profits often lead to clickbait, sensationalism, the same kinds of algorithms we see on social media. But you can consult a media bias chart and be at least aware of the potential. And also learning media literacy allows you to read a story, look for the weasel words which might be inserting an opinion or framing, understanding these kinds of effects in the way a story is told, emphasizing the salience of certain elements over others. This is critical skills for understanding information today. And that's where you can read through that and find the real facts that have been established.
Yeah. So it's education. People need to be educated to, you know, their intellectual or their thinking skills, their critical thinking skills. Do you know what? If we could wave a magic wand and cut the world to, no matter what side you're on, left, right, middle, whatever, to always say something like, well, there's two sides to every argument, and that's one side we've just heard, and I want to have a listen to the other side. I'm probably not going to agree with this, but I want to hear what they have to say. You know, that would be a quantum leap in global education if we could open people's minds to search for both sides of the story, and to,
well, and if we could hear the other side stated in a calm, logical way, not in an outraged, angry way, because we tend to hear the most outrageous, vehement versions of the opposition's arguments, which just makes us more solidified in our own opinions and more angry at them.
Yes. Did Trump actually refer to the left as vermin?
This was previous to when he was elected. He said that the vermin, he referred to his political opponents who did not agree with him politically as vermin, same as has been done by previous strongmen dictators in the past.
Yeah, Second World War, Nazi films and all the rest. That's horrendous stuff. So that's extremely biased. Well, coincidentally, UNESCO AI and the Future of Education have come out with a 160-page report. Don't worry, we're not going to burden you with 160 pages of it, but we will put the link up on prsmith.org/blog, as we do to everything we talk about. So that if you want to go and have a look at this stuff, whether it's Reggie's Angry Algorithms, or if it's UNESCO's AI and the Future of Education, you know, it's all there. You can just click on the link when you get there. So what do they have to say? Well, it is an interesting piece of work. We're going to split it into two parts because I'm conscious of time. But let me take you through the first part of what they said. That first of all, it covers the future of education, and it says inevitably once you get into AI, and I've always said this, Reggie, you're into philosophical provocation, basically. You know, it does take you down that route, and it's interesting and it's stimulating, and I think it's good to actually have the philosophical discussion. You don't have to be a philosopher to discuss the broader more areas of it. But AI futures aren't just about intelligence scores. This is what the UNESCO said. You know, AI futures aren't just about, you know, being more intelligent and scoring that. It's really more about pushing us to rethink. Now, wait for this. If you think we've given you some abstract stuff, this is going to blow you away altogether. They think it's not just about intelligence scores, but they're saying they should be pushing us to rethink what knowing really means. What knowing really means. Now, we're not going to get into an academic debate about this, but that opens up a whole area of, you know, what is knowledge, what is source of information, how do we process it, and the whole debate isn't only technical, but it's philosophical. How do we define learning processes, progress, human identity in an AI age? That you might say is all a bit abstract, but that's there. If you want to read that stuff, it's there. But then they get into debating the powers and perils of AI. And AI in schools and university is not inevitable, they say. It's not a wave that comes in and you can't stop it. There are choices. Education systems have choices. They have agency and the power to shape direction. So the core tension here is the opportunity for reinvention versus risks of over-automation and cultural bias. That I thought was an interesting observation. Another one, they said AI pedagogies, assessment and emerging educational futures. You know, classrooms can't and shouldn't be reduced to data points. AI must respect the incomputable nature of learning, and higher personalization risks can turn education into an isolated bubble rather than a mind-expanding, open opinion. And that's, I thought, it's what we've just been talking about, actually, already. Yeah. And then they say reevaluating and recentering human teachers. Teachers remain the backbone of education, and AI should amplify their work, not sideline it. Now, that's very interesting, because I got £1 million grant from the British government, the Higher Educational Funding Council of England, Scotland and Wales. Back in the 90s, I got £1 million budget to run the world's first series of CD-ROMs in explaining marketing. So we use interactive devices on CD-ROMs, and we got the biggest and the best in the world. And to this day, it still is, in my opinion, a fantastic piece of work. And we got the biggest and best from Japan to America and Europe, and put them all together in an interactive way. It's fantastic. But I remember somebody saying at a conference many years ago, the lecturer he's no longer the sage on stage. He's the guide on the side. He or she is the guide on the side. And they're saying that's with this new digitalization. So, he or she would be pointing you in the right direction. There'll be all these multimedia resources and interactive VRs and all the rest of it. Now, whether I think this would challenge that perspective right now, so in saying teachers remain the backbone of education. And I saw a clip the other day, which I thought was really nice, which basically said, the teachers are the backbone of education, and yes, they can be using it. Maybe, for example, allow students to use AI to write their essay, come back in, and then they'd have to criticize it in the class about the strengths and weaknesses of what they've just written. So they'd have to reread what they just got, and then criticize both sides of it. I thought that was interesting. Ethics and governance are imperatives for AI futures in education. Inequalities in education must be looked at with AI coming in. Reimagining AI in education policy. All of this stuff. So we put that summary up there for you and let you digest it. There's more, which we'll share with you next week. But I'm conscious time is rushing away. But thanks to Tim Bennett and Andreas Horn for raising that very interesting UNESCO report. And it reminds me and makes me think of risks that we've talked about before, such as cognitive offloading. If we dump everything, if AI has to do everything for us, will we become more dumbed down? The decline in critical thinking. This is a massive issue. We have to get people asking questions. We have to nurture inquisitive minds. And the reinforcements of divides of access, gender, language, and location are real issues. So we're going to part there. But thanks, Tim and Andreas, for sending us that. Reggie, meta skills have popped up. It had nothing to do with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and that meta, but meta
Not
skills.
That meta.
No. So what is meta skills? Well, why is it important in education?
Well, there was an interview with Google's DeepMind CEO, and he mentioned that meta skills would be necessary to thrive in the work world of tomorrow. Well, what are meta skills? Well, we hear a lot about transferable skills, adaptability, emotional intelligence, self-regulation, growth mindset. It tends to sound like these are important words, but they tend to sound like buzzwords. Really, what meta skills comes down to is your ability to learn, but even more of that, your ability to leverage your own curiosity, to nurture your curiosity, to keep learning about interesting things, both new topics and the classics like math, science, and the humanities. It's going to take people that love learning and maintain that love of learning. Let's not kill it out in kids through rote memorization, but nurture that love of learning so that people can keep learning and keep developing. Find areas where maybe they don't have as much knowledge or skills and find ways to improve those skills in fun, interesting ways that keep them moving forward and adapting to new environments, new technologies, new whatever, engaging with the world. But that's what it's all about. It's a positive vision, I feel like, of your learning skills. But it's more than just that. I think it also has to do with your love of learning, your passion for learning.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned flexibility and adaptability to, if we can be loose and flexible and be prepared to change and swap and have an inquisitive mind at the same time, that might be the key to it. I mean, Stephen Hawkins has this wonderful quote. Forgive me, the gist of it is intelligence is the ability to adapt, should I say, the ability to adapt. And so this might well be the ability for young people to adapt to using AI in sensible ways, measured ways, and being having inquisitive minds and love of learning. We need a better word than that, but that's what we've got to instill in people, is a love of inquisitive mind, or to get into new stuff. And that's a big challenge. But I think that if we can do that, then people will adapt to
Yeah,
the new
your
environment.
skills around skills. That's what you could say meta skills are your skills around skills. So your skills at developing skills, which is
I
kind of a funny way to think about it. Your skills.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Okay, now next week we're going to be talking about how to become algorithmically attractive. That's quite a mouthful, which takes us into SEO versus AIO. We've talked about that before. We've got more updates on it. Google's chatbot goes rogue for AI. It's unsafe for kids. We'll be covering that as well. For now, it's 1:30, so I'm just going to finish it with one thought, and it's about the Ryder Cup, which is that wonderful golf cup between Europe and USA, and it starts next Friday. Now, in preparation for it, it's in New York. And as you know, New York is a fun city. I love New York. It's great, great city. But because the golf is in New York, it's pretty raucous, it's pretty wild, it's pretty outrageous, and it's fantastic. The atmosphere will be electric. But the wrong word to say abuse. I mean, I go to QPR every week and I watch fans saying awful things to players. It's terrible, but they also applaud players as well. Because that's some of it can be really abusive. But what we'll see at the Ryder Cup will be kind of shocking, I'm sure. So to get the European players prepared, the coach, captain, gave them VR helmets and said, "Stick that on and now start swinging." And so they're swinging in virtual reality a ball and listening to stuff come out and using their name, saying terrible things to them. And it was interesting. I thought it was an innovative use of virtual reality. And that's what we want to see. We like innovation, as we do. We like AI, and we love our ethics, and we like our innovation. So I thought we'd just finish on that. So looking forward to that breaking. We'll have a bit of a giggle next week, because it will probably be starting just about the time we're talking. So I'm sure we can follow that one through. Reggie, got to say thank you very much indeed for stepping in. We appreciate it very much.
You, Paul.
Pleasure. Okay, we're going to wrap that up. We'll post the notes on pearsmith.org/blog. I know a lot of people come in and listen to this later, so that's fine. And the notes will be in the same place as well. Okay, we wish you a great week, and we'll continue with the children of Ukraine, as is in everybody's mind so much this week with the royal visits and all the rest of it. So we wish you well, and here's the children of Ukraine with Tim Hain. Coming right.
Homeland, husband, mother, and father, not knowing how we'll be received when we step off this train to anywhere. People still matter, people care, with only the bags that we carry in our hands. Driven from a sovereign land, and there's no more